Hi, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make one of the wildly popular and fun carrier bead covers. I'm going to be using mine and showing you how to do it actually as a pendant, working with peyote stitch, showing you how to seam up the peyote stitch, and then also how to stack it with head pins to make the pendant. So if you want to gather your materials, you can watch to the end of the video. I'll list everything in detail, but you need some carrier beads, some thread, and some seed beads, Delicas, to get started. We'll begin making the carrier bead necklace, and then again, if you need the complete list of materials, below the video in the little drop-down menu that says the description, click on that and you'll get links to all the different products as well. To begin with the cover, we are going to begin with peyote stitch. You can see I can pop the cover out there. And we are going to begin by making a peyote strip, and from making that peyote strip then we will seam it together into a continuous line, and from there you can slip it over your bead. Some people will decide that they want to actually kind of seam up along the sides or to glue it on. I think the fit is so tight with the 46 rows that we'll be doing that it fits perfectly, and it really is a little bit of a challenge to get the bead out, so I'm fine without gluing it. To begin, I have my wildfire beading thread, and I dropped an 11/0 seed bead onto the thread to act as a stop bead. I'm going to take my needle and thread through that 11/0 seed bead 2 times, leaving myself just about a 2-inch tail. That 2-inch tail then is what I will use to tie on and to close up as I seam the peyote around. Because we are doing a peyote pattern rather than just peyote stitch, we are going to be picking up our initial beads in a pattern. We're going to be doing lines that are 4 beads for this 6 rows of peyote stitch. So each time we do the peyote stitch, we'll be adding 3 beads at a time. The starter row will add 6. To begin the starter row, we're going to pick up two beads of the same color and add them to the line. I'm going to begin with the silver, then I'm going to add my green, then I'm going to add my topaz there. So I have my 6 beads on, and that's going to be the width of the carrier bead. So there are some carrier beads that are acrylic or plastic. Those you may need to make a little bit wider. This is going to be 6 wide for that Czech style carrier beads, and I'm using the ancient gold color and covering those. Those 6 beads then we're going to let drop down to our stop bead and get ready to begin our peyote stitch. When you are doing this stitch, if you are not familiar with peyote stitch and you're not wanting to jump right into a pattern, you can go ahead and watch some of the other YouTube videos which will begin the peyote stitch on a simpler version and not go into the actual pattern. To begin with the pattern, we are going to begin by adding in the next, what we'll say, color in line. I'm ending or beginning there with the silver, and as I come back the row, I'm going to grab every other bead. So I have 6 beads on my line. I'm going to add a bead and sew through bead 5. The bead that I add is going to be a silver bead. I'm then going to sew through bead number 5, which is going to be the first bead of that topaz color that I added, towards the stop bead. This first bead that you add, you want to make sure that it sits correctly. You don't want a lot of extra thread showing. You want to give a nice tight pull, and you want that silver bead to sit towards the top side. Next, we're going to go in and we are going to add our next bead in line. So when I add the next bead in line, I'm going to add whatever bead color I'm coming out of. That's how I'm going to get the diagonal. So I'm coming out of the topaz bead. I'm going to add a topaz bead, skip over and go through. So we went through the 5th bead. We're going to skip over the 4th bead, and we're going to go through the 3rd bead, which is going to be our first of our dark green iris beads. When I pull that, then you'll be able to start seeing the line being established for that topaz. So you have that 1, 2, 3 beads right in the line. Coming out of the green iris then, we're going to add a green iris bead, and I'm going to sew through the first silver bead, or the first bead that I put on to my peyote strip here, and then pull. And what that's going to create is that nice peyote line where you have almost like a brick kind of wall instance going on here, where you can see the actual lines starting to form. You're going to always have 3 beads that are kind of popping up, and that's what we're going to start to sew back into. So I flip the project in my hand. I always like to sew away from me rather than towards me. If you want to, you can keep that stop bead at the top, you can keep it at the bottom. I like to always kind of have whatever direction I'm going that I'm sewing away from me. As I come to the starter side now, I was going in, when I formed the lines, whatever needle my thread and needle were coming out of, whatever color, that's the color I added. As the lines get established, you'll be able to easily see what is the next bead to add. So I have on another green iris bead, and I'm going to sew through the green iris bead that is sticking up. That's going to get another green bead in line, so you can see that diagonal starting to happen. Next, I'm going to grab another topaz bead and sew through that topaz one sitting up. Grab that in. Now down here, that starter row, you want to make sure that that silver stays to the top, and I'm going to add a silver bead and go through the silver. Once you have these 3 rows, or 4 rows done rather, you can see that diagonal starting to happen. If you want to, you can just stay with the 3 colors and continue with this diagonal line. Again, I'm going to flip the project so that way I can sew away from me. When I'm here next to the silver, I'm going to add in my purple lined color, and I'm going to sew that in first to create that line. So I'm adding in my 4th color. Going through the silver then, as I go through this row, whatever color my thread and needle are coming out of, that's the color that I'm going to add. So I'm adding my silver, going through the topaz, coming out the topaz. I know I'm going to add a topaz. Go through that green then, because you're always going to have 3 beads that you add and 3 beads that are sticking up to add those 2. Coming out then the end, like I said, I am best when I flip the project then, so literally just flipping it over. And now I can see again what I need to add. So I know that I just sewed through, adding the same color bead that my thread was coming out of. Coming back the opposite way, I know I'm going to add whatever bead color I'm sewing into. So it's always going to be that opposite of one way you're going to add whatever color bead you're going out of. The next way you're going to do whatever bead color you're coming into. So I'm going into a silver, so I'm going to add a silver. And like I said, as the lines get established, it's really easy to remember and realize where you need to go and what color you need to add. So then I'm back to that cranberry bead that I added first, and I'm going to add in a cranberry. When you get to the sides, that's sometimes where you have to kind of look and say, all right, what's my next color to add? Flipping the project next to the cranberry. So the next one up, if you would look at that 4 colors, the 4th color that we're going to add back in is going to be the green iris. So I'm going to add my green iris, go through the cranberry bead, and now again we're back to that whatever bead you're going through and you're coming out of is the color bead that you're going to add. So I add my cranberry bead, so through the silver, coming out the silver, I'm going to add a silver. Go through, and then again turning around here after I add those 3 beads in, I'm going to flip my project, and now I'm doing the opposite. Whatever I'm sewing into is the color that I'm adding. So I'm sewing into a silver, I'm going to add a silver. Sewing into the cranberry, add the cranberry, and it's just going to continue on going along the line here, switching up and adding the beads in. Once you establish again that pattern, you know now when you're at the end here, I'm going to flip it. And at the end, looking back on the project, what's after the green is going to be that topaz color. So now that I know, it's time to add in my light topaz. So that's going to be my starting color. So as you continue to build these rows of this peyote color, you'll see the actual striping effect start to happen and start to go in place, adding in the beads in that series of 4. You are going to want to make this 46 lines of peyote long, or you can count 23 rows along the top. So if you turn along the side, you can count all the beads sticking up to 23. And then I'm going to show you how we are going to seam those beads together to make it completely seamless, that you can slip it over your carrier bead, making your cover. So with the carrier beads, you can string them to the side. You can make all different patterns. Like I said, I have some head pins here, and these are 22 gauge 3-inch gold head pins. And I'm going to add one on each of my carrier bead holes, stopped at the bottom just by the carrier bead itself. So you won't see those holes at the bottom. And then just like a ladder, I'm going to take my crystal, which is my 3x4mm rondelle in that Tanzanite 8B color, and put a crystal on each side. I could put multiple crystals, kind of up to you, what you want your pattern to be. And then I'm going to stack my next carrier bead on top. Again, if you want them to sit further apart, you can do that by adding more crystals in. If you have it too high, say higher than a 3 or a 4mm, or I'm sorry, a 3 or 4 inch head pin, you can always use your own wire, or even string wire right along the base and back up if you just wanted some bead-along beading cable as well. So adding the crystals, then I have my carrier beads that are stacked one on top of another to create my pendant for my necklace. Taking my last 2 crystals, then I'm going to add crystals right at the top just to kind of finish off the look. From there, I'm actually going to take my round nose pliers, leaving about an 1/8 of an inch or so, turn over with your round nose pliers and do them both to the same size, because you want to make sure that these sit correctly, and right when you're looking at them, you want your loops to sit nice so your pendant hangs nice and straight. Go back in them with your round nose pliers, and if you're not sure how to make a coiled eye pin, go ahead and check out some of the other YouTube videos, but I'm making a loop with my round nose pliers, which is kind of essential. Then I'm going to go over to the other side, same deal, make a loop with my round nose pliers, making sure that your loops on both sides of your head pins are the same size. Because if your loops are not the same size, my one is a little bit smaller, I'll go in and make it a little bit bigger, then it's again not going to hang correctly. Take your needle nose pliers then, hold that loop that you just created, and twist some of that wire around the top. You don't need to do this. You could have cut the extra wire off. This just gives a nice finished polished look. It also makes sure that if you are using bead wire rather than a leather or something like that, that the hole or the cut is not going to open up and the cording is not going to fall through there. Once I have one side done, then I'll go in with my pliers again and do the other side to match. And it's a little awkward because you have the other side kind of hanging out there. But you just kind of twist it out of the way. And once you have it mirror image, you have the same on the right and the left, you take your cutters, cut off that extra little wire. We're going to make sure that our head pins are facing the same direction because I want my wire to string right through, that you're actually not going to see the loop. It's going to sit to the side of the actual carrier beads. So that's a nice pendant here. Because I didn't glue down, I can kind of rotate them around a little bit so that way my lines do still line up even with my crystals in there. You can see I can kind of exaggerate that line a little bit, pulling it over and making sure that that line continues. So now I have my nice lines going on. From here, I'll just take my carrier bead pendant and I will string my necklace right along the top and finish off just with simple crimps and ending the necklace. When you come to the end of your 46 rows, you have it completely covering the carrier bead. What you need to make sure is that you are on an even count. What that means is that when you look at the starter side, you have the first bead on the starter side sitting recessed and the last bead on the ending row is sitting out. What that's going to allow you to do is, like peyote does, it nicely seams up completely kind of to the naked eye. You're not even going to see any of that connection point. What we are going to do is, knowing that we're ending opposite, basically having that 23 rows or 46 rows of peyote stitch, we have an opening here and we have a bead here that wants to fit in that opening puzzle piece. Bead sticking out in row 2, and we have a bead recessed in row 2. You're going to fold the peyote in towards itself, and we are going to seam up just like a zipper, going every other bead. So I'm coming out the bottom of the ending side, or the right side. I'm going to go into the bottom bead on the left hand side towards the stop bead. That's going to be our first connector there. From there, I'm going back to the right side, so I'm always zigzagging from right to left, and I'm going to go through the bead that's sticking out on the right hand side. Bead on the left now sticking out, which is that green iris bead, and I'm going to sew through the green iris bead. And you can see those beads now, as I start to pull, are going to sit seamlessly next to one another. Bead on the right going through the silver, then bead on the left going through the silver. Bead on the right going through that dark topaz bead, and that's going to put me out the top. However, when I come out the top, I'm still not seamed up, because what you can see is that there's still an opening right along the top here. The first row and the last row still are not connected. With my thread and needle, I'm going to go back to that starter bead, that silver bead, and sew into or down that silver Delica. While I'm sewing down that silver Delica, I'm also going to sew through the line down the next silver Delica. So I have 2 beads that I'm sewing through. This is going to bring those 2 beads together. You can see that arching thread there, and that's going to create that nice seamless line of the silver beads. Going back up then towards the top, I'm going to jump over to my next row back, which is my dark or my light topaz row, and sew up 2 of those beads. Giving a nice tight pull, making sure no extra thread is showing, and then we're going to slide that stop bead out of the way. If you are somebody that doesn't want to see a knot whatsoever, you can sew the starter thread and the ender thread back into the peyote stitch. What I'm going to do is simply tie the 2 ends together and then use my thread burner and kind of pull it towards the back or the middle of the peyote strip. You can also see this is a nice simple way to make a banded ring that you can do. I have a number of other YouTube videos. There's also tons and tons of patterns on Pinterest and all over the internet, really, of different patterns for these carrier beads. They've been so popular. I actually did a video a long time ago, and then we ran out of them, and we're waiting for the supplier, and I decided I would just redo the video for you guys today. So going through then, once you have that knot, you're going to take the thread zap or the thread burner and burn that thread down nice and short. Then you're going to take the burner again and burn those edges flush. If you want to, some people will like glue, and you can take some super new glue or some super glue and just glue down the ends as well. And there you have the carrier cover completely done. My idea is that you're stacking these and that you're going to have a necklace where they all have those continuous lines. To slip it on the carrier, you're literally just slipping it. You can see how tight it is, like a glove, slipping it right over that carrier bead. The counts, if you don't do them correctly, you'll be able to kind of feel it. What I want to do then with this carrier bead is line up my pattern. So you may need to kind of shift and rotate it. You can see it just rotated right around the band there. I want to rotate it just enough that my pattern kind of lines up as I'm looking at them stacked. And that's going to be just a tiny little bit off there, right about stacked. So when you're looking from one bead to the other, they're nice and stacked. You can also actually create the peyote bands that are wider and actually put them right across one another. So however many wide you want to do, you would count that and make that your count. So if you wanted to do 2 wide, that you're doing the cover as 1 strip, you would do 12 beads as your starter, adding 6 more 18 beads as a starter, so keep that in mind. What I'm going to do is show you how to actually stack them with a bead on top of one another and use a head pin to hold them in place. Once you're finished stringing, and I'm just using 4mm and 3mm Czech pearls along with those crystals, the 3x4mm Rondelles, you're just going to string right through the center of those eye pins that you created. 3mm beads fit perfectly in there, but you can kind of test out exactly which beads you want to put above your carrier bead pendant. Again, if you do need any of the materials for this project, I am using the olivine and then the eggplant in the pearls, as well as the light Tanzanite 3x4mm. When I was using the seed beads, I was using the metallic dark green iris in the greenish color, then dark topaz rainbow, purple lined light topaz luster, and then of course the Duracoat galvanized silver as well. So those were the colors that I used. Have fun, play around, look at the different patterns. If you would like to purchase those from us online, below the video in the description, which says when the video was published, if you hit the down arrow or the show more button, that'll give you links to all of these different products as well, including the ancient gold or different color of carrier beads in case you want to get creative. You do see a little bit of the carrier bead just at the top and the bottom, so have fun with those colors as well. You can also make smaller strips to go along the middle to expose the carrier bead. So all kinds of ideas there based on this carrier bead pendant. As always, if you can, you give me a little thumbs up that you like this video. That's great. You can ask questions in the comments. We'll get back to you. Give ideas if you want to learn how to do something new. I'm always happy to connect with our community and to get ideas from you to make the video catered to your liking. Also, you can join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. And the whole idea there is to make you a better beader, to offer help, to get you connected with a community, to show you techniques, to offer inspiration, and offer a community that can help you to achieve your beading design goals. As always, thank you so much for watching and have fun creating the carrier bead pendant.